The restaurant was lively that evening, with warm lights reflecting off the polished wooden tables. Families laughed, friends chatted, and the smell of fresh food mixed with the faint scent of coffee and desserts. At a corner table, a young woman had just sat down, placing her small handbag on the chair beside her. She had been looking forward to this evening for a while. Wanting nothing more than a quiet meal to herself after a long day, she had chosen this spot, because it felt calm despite the crowd. From her table, she could see the restaurant in its full energy. Children were running between tables with parents calling after them. Servers moved quickly but gracefully between orders, and the murmur of conversations created a comforting background hum. It was the kind of place where someone could sit for hours and feel the world just soft around them. She had just opened the menu when she noticed a man at a nearby table glancing at her more than a casual observer might. At first, she thought it was a simple glance. People watched others sometimes, nothing unusual in that. But then the glances became persistent, uncomfortable, and unmistakably intrusive. He leaned slightly toward her, his eyes fixed, and she immediately felt a chill run down her spine. She tried to focus back on her menu, pretending not to notice, hoping he would go away. For a few moments she thought perhaps she was imagining it. Maybe he was just looking around the room. But the feeling in her gut told her something was wrong. She tried to ignore him and order her meal, but her heart started to race as he moved closer. By now, it was clear that he was not just looking. He was staring and making subtle but inappropriate gestures. She felt her hands tighten around her menu, unsure what to do. She was not used to confrontation, and certainly not used to feeling threatened in a place that felt safe. The man started speaking, though his words were low, almost too quiet for others to hear. At first, she didn't catch them. Then she realized he was addressing her directly, making comments that were unwelcome and clearly meant to intimidate. She shook her head slightly, trying to signal that she was not interested, but it seemed only to encourage him. His presence became more forceful, and her unease grew into fear. She looked around, hoping a server might notice. A few people glanced in her direction, but no one stepped in. The restaurant was busy, and it seemed like everyone was caught up in their own moments. She considered leaving, but she had already settled in and did not want to create a scene. Still, the tension in her chest grew as the man continued his advances. His voice a mix of charm and threat. At one point, he leaned over slightly, reaching across the table in a way that made her recoil. She said firmly, "Please don't touch me," hoping that would make him stop. Instead, he smiled, as if her words were a challenge. She could feel her cheeks flush, not with embarrassment, but with a rising panic. Her mind raced, thinking of what she could do next. There were other diners around, but no one was stepping forward. She felt trapped in her corner, trying to maintain composure while feeling completely vulnerable. The situation escalated quickly. The man's voice became louder, his gestures bolder, and the threat more obvious. She saw him knocking over a glass intentionally, making it spill near her table, just to draw attention. People nearby looked, but only shrugged and returned to their meals. She felt a mix of frustration and fear, realizing that she might have to defend herself. Her heart pounded as she tried to signal the staff. She caught the eye of a waiter passing by and mouthed, "Help me," but he nodded politely and walked on. The man noticed her attempt and laughed softly, leaning back as if to say she couldn't stop him. It was humiliating and terrifying at the same time. She felt all eyes in the restaurant now, not watching her for help but for entertainment, which made her feel even smaller. Her mind went to options. She could leave, but he might follow. She could shout, but she feared escalation. Every instinct screamed to get out of the situation, but the table and the bustling crowd limited her movement. Her hands shook, and her breathing became shallow. She wanted nothing more than someone to step in and take control of the situation for her. Then, in a moment of desperation, she cried out, "Please, someone help me." The voice was loud, raw with fear and frustration. For a second, there was a pause. The restaurant seemed to notice, and conversations faltered. Some people turned, their eyes wide with surprise, but the moment was fleeting. The man's reaction was immediate. He laughed a harsh, cruel sound and leaned even closer. Clearly intending to intimidate her further, she pressed herself against the back of the chair. feeling the small space around her shrink with tension. She looked around, scanning faces, hoping for empathy, for someone to stand up. She noticed a few people murmuring to each other, confused, unsure if they should intervene. She felt the weight of isolation settle heavily. No one moved fast enough, and the minutes stretched endlessly. In the chaos, she remembered the small self-defense tactics she had learned, how to make noise, how to push away. But the man was strong, and her fear made her hesitate. She felt trapped, aware that her options were limited. Every instinct screamed at her to fight back or escape, yet she felt frozen. The restaurant, once a place of comfort and warmth, felt like a trap. Her eyes met another diner's across the room, someone who seemed to understand her distress. She mouthed again, trying to communicate the urgency. This time, the person nodded and got up, approaching cautiously. That small movement sparked a flicker of hope in her. She realized she was not completely alone, that there were people who could help if they chose to. The man, noticing the approach, scoffed and made a dismissive gesture. But the intervention had already shifted the balance. The waiter finally returned, seeing the concern in the approaching diner's eyes. He stepped closer to the table, speaking firmly. "Sir, you need to stop now." The man hesitated, clearly not expecting confrontation from both the staff and another patron. The young woman, still shaking, took a deep breath, feeling a small sense of relief that someone had stepped in. Her voice was steadier now, though still tinged with fear. "Please, just leave me alone." The man looked around, realizing that the attention of the room had shifted to him. He muttered something under his breath and stood up abruptly, making his way toward the exit. His final glance at her was menacing, but he left the restaurant, disappearing into the night. As the door closed behind him, the tension in the room slowly eased. Conversations resumed, though a quiet hum of curiosity and shock lingered. The staff checked on her, offering apologies and asking if she was okay. She nodded, grateful, yet still trembling. She realized she had survived something that could have escalated far worse, and the relief of safety mixed with lingering fear, sitting back down. She let herself breathe, feeling the adrenaline slowly drain. The restaurant, once a backdrop of ordinary life, had become the stage for a moment that would mark her forever. Though the immediate danger had passed, she knew that the emotional impact would last much longer. Her cry for mercy had been heard, but the memory of the helplessness, the fear, and the isolation would stay with her for years to come. As she finally left the restaurant that evening, she walked into the cool night air, taking in the quiet of the street. She reflected on what had happened, knowing that the journey ahead to fully feel safe again was just beginning. The night had been terrifying, but it had also sparked a realization of her own resilience and the importance of standing up. Even when the world seemed indifferent, that night, she vowed that she would not let fear define her, that she would seek justice and ensure that such behavior could not continue unchallenged. Though she did not yet know how long it would take or what challenges awaited, the seed of determination had been planted. The cry for mercy had been made, and now it was up to her and those who believed in right to see it through. After the terrifying incident in the restaurant, the young woman walked home slowly, her mind racing with everything that had happened. The cool night air brushed against her face, but it did little to calm the storm inside. She kept thinking about the man who had approached her and the helplessness she had felt when it seemed no one would act. Every detail replayed in her mind, the way he had leaned forward, the laugh that had made her stomach twist. In the moment she had finally cried out for help, when she arrived home, she locked the door and leaned against it, taking deep breaths. Her hands were still shaking, and she felt exhausted in a way that was more than physical. She wanted to cry, scream, and let out all the tension she had held inside. She allowed herself a few minutes to do just that, curling up in a chair and letting the tears come freely. It was the first release she had experienced since the incident. But even then, the fear lingered. After she had calmed down slightly, she picked up her phone. She needed to document what had happened. She wrote down everything: the time, the place, how the man had acted, what she had said, and what had been said in return. Writing it down helped her organize her thoughts, and she knew it could be important later if she needed to report the incident formally. She saved the notes carefully, hoping she would never have to use them, but knowing that it was a necessary step. The next morning, she woke up feeling tense and uneasy. Memories of the previous evening returned immediately, making it hard to focus. She tried to eat breakfast, but her stomach twisted with anxiety. She felt the weight of vulnerability pressing down on her. How could something so frightening happen in a place that should have felt safe? The question repeated itself in her mind over and over. Bringing a sense of frustration and confusion, she decided to report the incident to the authorities. Sitting in the police station, she recounted everything to an officer, explaining every detail with clarity. She described the man's behavior, his gestures, and how he had made her feel unsafe. The officer listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions, trying to piece together a clear understanding of what had occurred. She appreciated the attention, even though it did not immediately make her feel safer. After filing the report, she began to think about how this event would affect her life. She realized that fear might shape her future actions if she let it. For days, she found herself avoiding restaurants, public spaces, and even casual outings. Every sound in the streets made her jump. Every glance from a stranger felt threatening. Her friends and family noticed the change. They expressed concern, tried to comfort her, and encouraged her to move forward. But they could not fully understand the depth of her fear. The young woman began talking to a therapist, someone who could help her process the trauma. She learned to name her emotions, to recognize the physical sensations that accompanied panic, and to use techniques to calm herself when anxiety arose. It was not an instant solution, and some days were harder than others. She slowly began to regain control over her thoughts and feelings. Therapy became a lifeline, offering her tools to face a world that suddenly felt uncertain. Meanwhile, she kept thinking about justice. Reporting the incident felt important, but the process of action felt slow. Days turned into weeks, and she did not hear much from the authorities. It was discouraging, and at times, she felt the weight of hopelessness. Would anyone actually be held accountable? Could justice be delayed for so long that it lost meaning? The questions haunted her. Despite the delays, she did not give up. She kept records, stayed in touch with the police, and gathered support from friends who encouraged her to remain steadfast. They helped her understand that persistence mattered, even when progress seemed invisible. She realized that her courage was not just about facing the man, but about maintaining hope and belief in the possibility of accountability. One day a breakthrough came. A witness who had been dining at the restaurant the night of the incident contacted the police, providing a detailed account that matched her story. This gave new momentum to the case. The authorities began to take action more seriously, gathering evidence and preparing for further investigation. She felt a mix of relief and renewed anxiety. Relief because the process was finally moving forward. Anxiety because it meant facing the man again. Even indirectly through the court or police procedures, the young woman's daily life began to improve slowly. She ventured out more, attended social events cautiously, and started reconnecting with the world she had temporarily retreated from. Every step outside her comfort zone was a small victory, a reclaiming of space and confidence that had been taken away in that restaurant. Friends who had been patient and understanding celebrated these steps with her, encouraging her to continue. She also found a community of people who had faced similar experiences. Sharing stories and listening to others helped her feel less alone. She realized that her experience, while deeply personal, was not unique, and that there were ways to navigate the aftermath with resilience and support. She learned that healing was not linear, and that it was okay to have days of doubt and fear as long as she kept moving forward. Despite the progress, there were moments of lingering fear. Walking past the restaurant one day, she felt the old anxiety return, memories flashing vividly, but she reminded herself of the strength she had discovered within, of the small victories she had achieved, and of the support that surrounded her. She could not erase what had happened, but she could continue to live fully despite it. Over the next few months, she followed the legal process closely. The police conducted interviews, reviewed evidence, and slowly built a case. Each step brought mixed emotion satisfaction that action was being taken, but also feared that the process might fail, or that the man might try to intimidate her. She learned patience in a new way, understanding that justice often took time, that every small step mattered. Through it all, she focused on her personal growth. She returned to hobbies and interests she had neglected, spending time in ways that nurtured her spirit. She discovered that reclaiming her life was just as important as seeking justice. The balance between recovery and accountability became a guiding principle in her days, helping her find purpose and direction. By the end of the year, she had grown stronger and more resilient. The incident remained a part of her story, but it no longer defined her entirely. She had survived, she had sought help, and she had begun the slow but steady journey toward healing. The restaurant incident, though traumatic, became a catalyst for growth, reflection, and determination. She knew the road ahead would still have challenges, but she also knew that she had the strength to face them. The small steps she had taken, crying out for help, reporting the incident, seeking support, and persisting in the face of fear, had begun to shape a future where she could feel safe and empowered again. The cry for mercy had sparked not just immediate assistance, but a long journey toward justice, self-respect, and renewed courage, even as the memory of that night lingered. She carried forward with a sense of purpose. She understood that the fear she had felt was real, that the vulnerability had been profound, but that her ability to confront it, to persist, to seek justice, had become a defining strength. Every day, every decision to move forward reinforced the truth that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it despite the fear. And in that realization, she found hope and determination to continue, knowing that eventually, justice would speak. The months following the report of the restaurant incident were some of the most challenging the young woman had ever faced. The initial shock had faded, but the emotional and mental strain remained constant. She felt a strange mixture of hope and dread every time she thought about the man who had frightened her. On one hand, she was relieved that authorities were taking her case seriously. On the other, she feared that nothing would ultimately happen, that the man would continue to avoid consequences. The investigation was slow. Police officers came and went, taking statements from the staff at the restaurant, reviewing surveillance footage, and attempting to track down witnesses. Some days brought progress, while others felt like dead ends. The young woman grew frustrated with the pace, feeling as though the world around her was indifferent to her suffering. She wanted action, but all she could do was wait and trust the system, which was harder than she had ever imagined. At home, she continued therapy, trying to process the trauma that had left its mark on her. The sessions became a safe space where she could voice her fears without judgment. She spoke about the sleepless nights, the moments of panic when she passed restaurants, and the constant feeling of being watched. Her therapist listened carefully, helping her find ways to cope with anxiety and teaching her techniques to regain control over her thoughts. Some days were harder than others, but slowly she began to notice small improvements. Her panic attacks became less frequent, and her confidence returned bit by bit. Despite her efforts, she could not shake the lingering fear that the man might show up again. She remained vigilant in public, always aware of her surroundings. The world had become a place where she felt she needed to defend herself at all times. Even casual interactions could trigger her anxiety, as she wondered if any stranger could become a threat. It was exhausting. She refused to let it control her life entirely. Friends and family played a critical role during this time. They were patient, offering support without pushing her beyond what she could handle. They reminded her that her feelings were valid and that it was okay to take things slowly. Sometimes she accepted invitations to gatherings or dinners, and other times she politely declined. The important thing was that she was learning to make choices that prioritized her safety and emotional well-being. Her determination to see justice was another source of strength. Each piece of evidence collected by the police felt like a small victory. She knew that the case would take time, and she braced herself for the inevitable obstacles. False leads and forgotten details from witnesses sometimes made her doubt whether the truth would be recognized. There were moments when she felt the weight of hopelessness, questioning whether the effort was worth it. Yet she refused to give up. During one particularly difficult week, she received news that gave her a renewed sense of purpose. A key witness, someone who had been in the restaurant at the time and had seen the man's behavior clearly, was willing to come forward. This was a turning point, as it meant that there was a credible account to support her story. The excitement of this development was mixed with anxiety. She knew that the legal process would now move forward, but she would have to face the details again and recount the trauma she had endured, preparing to meet with the authorities. She spent hours reviewing her notes, making sure she could recount the incident accurately. She practiced describing what had happened, emphasizing the specific actions that made her feel unsafe. It was difficult to relive those moments, but she knew that doing so was necessary to ensure that justice could be served. With each rehearsal, she felt a mixture of empowerment and vulnerability. Speaking up was no longer optional, it was essential when the meeting with the authorities finally took place. The young woman felt a surge of nervous energy. The witness provided a statement that corroborated her account, describing the man's aggressive behavior and the fear he had caused. Hearing the witness speak filled her with relief. For the first time in months, she felt that the pieces were aligning and that the truth might finally be acknowledged. The authorities assured her that the case would proceed, and she left the meeting feeling a cautious sense of hope. Even with this progress, her personal life continued to be affected by the incident. She still struggled with moments of panic and doubt, especially in crowded or public spaces. Her therapist helped her develop strategies to manage these moments, such as grounding techniques, deep breathing, and visualizations that reminded her of her strength and resilience. She learned to recognize triggers and to approach them gradually, reclaiming her confidence one step at a time. Her social interactions slowly improved. She began to reconnect with friends she had avoided during the height of her anxiety. She started attending small gatherings, feeling the warmth of human connection and the reassurance of safety in numbers. Each positive interaction reinforced her sense of normalcy and reminded her that the world could still be kind and supportive, even after trauma. The young woman also focused on her professional life. She returned to work with renewed determination, throwing herself into projects and responsibilities that gave her a sense of purpose. Her colleagues noticed a quiet strength in her, a determination to not let fear dictate her life. She found solace in routine and productivity, which provided a sense of stability amid the emotional turbulence. Months turned into a year, and the investigation continued. The police conducted further interviews, reviewed more evidence, and prepared the case for potential legal action. The young woman attended court preparations, learning what to expect during proceedings. Though nervous, she felt ready to face the challenges ahead. The prospect of confronting the man through the legal system was intimidating, but she knew it was a necessary step toward closure. During this time, she also became involved in community support groups for individuals who had experienced similar situations. Listening to others' stories and sharing her own provided a sense of solidarity and healing. She realized that she was not alone, and that collective support could empower individuals to seek justice and reclaim their lives. The experience strengthened her resolve and reminded her of the importance of courage, persistence, and resilience. The young woman continued to document her experiences meticulously, keeping track of all communications, meetings, and developments related to the case. This careful record-keeping became a source of empowerment, allowing her to feel organized and prepared for every step of the legal process. She understood that details mattered and that her diligence could make a significant difference in the pursuit of justice. Her family remained her anchor during this long and difficult journey. They provided emotional support, accompanied her to meetings, and offered encouragement when she felt overwhelmed. Their presence reminded her that she did not have to face the challenges alone, and that love and care could help mitigate the fear and anxiety she experienced. Each small gesture of support reinforced her sense of worth and determination. By the end of the second year since the incident, the young woman had grown stronger, more resilient, and better equipped to navigate the complexities of the legal system and her own emotional recovery. The trauma still lingered, but it no longer controlled her. She had learned to face fear, seek support, and take active steps toward reclaiming her life. The journey was far from over, but she had discovered an inner strength she had never fully known before. As the investigation reached a critical phase, she felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. The man's potential accountability was now within reach. and she prepared herself for the possibility of a courtroom encounter. Her emotions were complex: fear, hope, anxiety, and determination intertwined, but she faced them with courage, knowing that she had already endured so much and had emerged stronger. The young woman's story was no longer just about the incident in the restaurant. It had become a story of resilience, persistence, and the pursuit of justice. Each step she had taken, from crying out for help to navigating therapy and legal processes, had reinforced her sense of agency and self-respect. The journey was ongoing, but she had learned that healing and justice required patience, courage, and unwavering commitment. By the time the case was preparing to move into formal legal proceedings, she felt ready to face whatever came next. She understood that the road ahead would be challenging, but she had already proven to herself that she could endure, adapt, and continue forward. The months of struggle had not been in vain. They had shaped her into someone who could confront fear with strength and pursue justice with determination. The story of her cry for mercy had evolved into a testament to human resilience and the power of persistence in the face of adversity. The day of the first formal hearing arrived, and the young woman felt a mix of anxiety and determination. She had prepared for months, reviewing every detail of the incident, organizing her notes, and speaking with her legal team about what to expect. The courtroom felt imposing, with high ceilings, polished wooden benches, and an air of seriousness that made her heart race. Yet she knew she had to be strong. She could not let fear control her now as she entered the courtroom. She saw the man sitting a few rows away, his expression a mixture of arrogance and uncertainty. He had not expected this day to arrive so quickly, and she could sense the tension radiating from him. Her legal team guided her to her seat, offering reassuring words and support. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the months of preparation and the courage she had built along the way. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. Proceedings began with formal statements, and the young woman listened carefully as the case was outlined. The prosecution presented the sequence of events, including witness statements, surveillance footage, and the notes she had meticulously kept. The evidence was clear and detailed, showing the pattern of intimidation and aggression that the man had displayed. She felt a sense of relief knowing that her efforts to document everything were now making a real impact. When it was her turn to speak, she stood up with her legal team beside her. She recounted the events in the restaurant with clarity and calm, focusing on the facts and her feelings of fear and vulnerability. Each word felt like a release, a declaration of truth that could not be denied. The courtroom listened intently, and she noticed nods of understanding from some of the spectators. For the first time, she felt that her voice truly mattered. The man's defense team attempted to challenge her account, questioning details and suggesting inconsistencies. It was difficult to hear, but she remained composed, relying on her thorough preparation and the support of her lawyer. She answered questions honestly, acknowledging emotions and fear without letting them be used against her. Her honesty and courage shone through, reinforcing the credibility of her testimony. Witnesses from the restaurant were called next. Each one described what they had seen, confirming the aggressive behavior and the fear it caused. Some staff members admitted they had hesitated, unsure of how to intervene, while others recounted how they had finally stepped in to help. The consistency of these statements strengthened her case and helped illustrate the seriousness of the incident. She felt a quiet pride knowing that her persistence had brought the truth to light. The courtroom atmosphere was tense during cross-examinations. The man's legal team tried to intimidate her and the witnesses, but she held her ground. She had rehearsed these moments, and the support from her lawyer and family gave her the strength to remain steady. Every question answered, every detail confirmed, was a step toward justice. She felt the weight of the past 3 years lifting, replaced by a growing sense of empowerment. As the hearing progressed, the judge reviewed the evidence carefully. The surveillance footage, witness statements, and her own testimony painted a clear picture. The man's attempts to minimize his actions were exposed, and his credibility was weakened. The young woman felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The emotional toll of facing him in a formal setting was immense, but she knew that confronting the fear head-on was necessary to secure accountability. Throughout the proceedings, Her family and friends attended, providing silent but powerful support. Their presence reminded her that she was not alone and that the courage she had shown was recognized and valued. Each glance, each reassuring nod, helped her maintain focus and strength. She realized that this journey was not just about legal justice, but also about reclaiming her life and dignity. After hours of testimony, the judge allowed closing statements. The prosecution summarized the evidence, emphasizing the fear and distress caused by the man's actions, and highlighted the importance of accountability. Her legal team spoke with conviction, reinforcing her credibility and the necessity of justice. The defense tried to cast doubt, but the weight of the evidence was undeniable. As the hearing concluded for the day, the young woman stepped outside, breathing in the fresh air with a mix of relief and lingering tension. The next steps in the legal process would be critical, and she knew that patience would be necessary. She had faced fear directly, spoken truthfully, and now awaited the outcome with a quiet but firm resolve. In the days following the hearing, she reflected on the experience. Facing the man in court had been terrifying, but it also reinforced her resilience. She had taken control of her narrative, stood firm in the face of intimidation, and shown that fear could not silence her. Each step she had taken, from documenting the incident to testifying, was a victory in itself. Her daily life continued, but with a renewed sense of purpose. She attended therapy sessions, practiced self-care, and maintained connections with supportive friends and family. The court experience had strengthened her confidence, allowing her to engage more fully with the world around her. She no longer felt as constrained by fear, though she remained vigilant and mindful of her safety. The legal process continued with additional hearings, the gathering of more evidence, and further witness statements. Each development brought a mix of emotions, anticipation, anxiety, and cautious hope. She stayed informed, communicated closely with her lawyer, and remained proactive in understanding the steps ahead. The months of preparation and persistence were now paying off in meaningful ways. She also shared her experiences with others who had faced similar situations, offering support and encouragement. Her journey became an example of resilience and the importance of seeking help and justice. Through her story, others found inspiration to face their own challenges, reinforcing the power of community and shared strength. As the case progressed toward a final verdict, the young woman reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The fear and trauma of that night in the restaurant had not disappeared, but they no longer defined her. She had confronted the man, documented the truth, and navigated the legal system with courage and determination. Each step had been a reclaiming of power and dignity. When the final hearing was scheduled, as she prepared herself mentally and emotionally, she knew that the outcome would have a profound impact, not just legally but personally and emotionally. She felt ready, strengthened by the months of resilience, support, and preparation. The courtroom, once a place of fear, now felt like a stage where her courage and truth would be recognized. During the final proceedings, the judge carefully considered all the evidence. The man's actions were laid bare. The witness's statements corroborated her account, and her testimony remained consistent and credible. The weight of the evidence was undeniable, and the importance of accountability was emphasized throughout the hearing. She listened intently, her heart pounding, knowing that the moment of resolution was near as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict. The young woman felt a mixture of anticipation, relief, and nervousness. She had endured so much to reach this point, and the outcome would mark a significant chapter in her life. She held her head high, ready to face whatever came next, confident in the strength she had built over the past 3 years. When the verdict was finally read, the man was held accountable for his actions. Relief washed over her like a wave, mingled with exhaustion and gratitude. The months of struggle, preparation, and persistence had culminated in justice. She felt a profound sense of closure, knowing that her cry for mercy had been heard and that the truth had prevailed. In the days following the verdict, she reflected on the journey. The courtroom had been a place of fear, tension, and challenge, but also of empowerment, courage, and eventual resolution. She recognized the strength she had discovered within herself and the importance of the support network that had guided her along the way. The experience had reshaped her understanding of resilience, justice, and the power of speaking out as life returned to a sense of normalcy. She continued to embrace personal growth and healing. She reconnected with friends, pursued passions and interests, and maintained the therapeutic practices that had supported her recovery. The experience remained a part of her story, but it no longer controlled her. She had reclaimed her voice, her confidence, and her sense of safety. The journey through the legal system, though arduous, had shown her the importance of persistence, courage, and the belief in justice. She understood that accountability could take time, but that every step toward truth mattered. Her cry for mercy had not been ignored, and the resolution brought a sense of empowerment that would carry her forward into the future. The courtroom had quieted after the final verdict was announced, and the young woman felt a mix of relief, exhaustion, and disbelief. 3 years of fear, anxiety, and uncertainty had led to this moment. The man responsible for the terror she had experienced in the restaurant had been held accountable. Her voice had been heard, her story validated, and justice had finally spoken. Yet, even in the relief, she knew that the journey of healing was far from over. Walking out of the courthouse, the sunlight felt warmer than ever before. She took deep breaths, allowing herself to feel the freedom that came with knowing the threat had been removed. Friends and family waited outside, their faces lighting up with smiles and congratulations. They hugged her tightly, sharing in the relief and joy that this long-awaited day had arrived. It was a moment of triumph, not just legally, but personally. She had survived, endured, and persisted. And now the world recognized that strength. In the days that followed, she reflected on everything that had happened. The fear that had once consumed her, the sleepless nights, and the constant worry, all of it, seemed to exist in a past chapter that, while still part of her story, no longer defined her. She realized that she had grown stronger through the experience. She had faced her fears, navigated the complexities of the legal system, and emerged resilient. The empowerment she felt was profound, shaping her understanding of herself and her capabilities. She also thought about the support she'd received along the way. Her family, friends, and legal team had been instrumental in helping her persist. Their encouragement, guidance, and belief in her were reminders that courage does not exist in isolation. She felt immense gratitude for those who had stood by her, reinforcing the idea that seeking help and support was not a weakness, but a vital part of reclaiming her life. The young woman began to embrace a new routine, focusing on activities that nurtured her spirit and promoted healing. She revisited hobbies she had once enjoyed but had set aside during the years of fear. She took long walks, spending time in parks and open spaces, reconnecting with the world around her. She explored creative outlets like writing and painting, which allowed her to express emotions that were difficult to articulate verbally. Each day became a step toward reclaiming a sense of normalcy and joy. Even with the relief of justice, moments of reflection brought mixed emotions. She thought about the impact of the incident on her life, the anxiety, the isolation, and the way she had once questioned her own safety in everyday situations. She acknowledged these feelings without judgment, understanding that healing was not a linear process. There would still be days of doubt or discomfort, but she now had the tools and resilience to navigate them with confidence. She also became an advocate in her own way, sharing her experience with others who had faced similar challenges. Through support groups, online forums, and community events, she offered encouragement and guidance. Her story became a beacon of hope for others who feared that their voices would not be heard. She spoke about persistence, courage, and the importance of documenting experiences and seeking accountability. By helping others, she found additional purpose and meaning in her journey. The young woman's relationships also deepened. Friends and family who had supported her during the ordeal became even more integral in her life. She valued connections that were based on trust, understanding, and empathy. These relationships provided a foundation of security and affirmation, reinforcing the idea that no one should have to face fear or injustice alone. She made a conscious effort to nurture these bonds, recognizing their importance in her continued healing. Professionally, She approached her work with renewed energy and focus. The challenges she had faced had instilled a sense of determination and resilience that she carried into her career. She became more confident in expressing her ideas, taking on responsibilities that had previously felt daunting. Her experience had shown her that she could handle adversity and emerge stronger, a lesson that translated into every aspect of her professional life. Over time, she also reflected on personal growth beyond the legal resolution. The incident had forced her to confront fear, vulnerability, and uncertainty in profound ways. She had learned to trust her instincts, to recognize the value of preparation and documentation, and to assert her rights and boundaries. These lessons, hard-earned and deeply felt, became guiding principles in her life, shaping her interactions and decisions in lasting ways as months passed. The young woman revisited the restaurant where the incident had occurred. It was an emotional experience, standing in a place that had once represented fear and vulnerability. She observed the familiar layout, noting the same tables, chairs, and bustling atmosphere. Yet this time, she felt a sense of control and confidence. She walked through the space deliberately, aware of her surroundings, but without the lingering terror that had once paralyzed her. It was a symbolic reclaiming of space, tangible demonstration of how far she had come. The experience of seeking justice had taught her patience and persistence. She realized that accountability often required time and effort, and that the process could be challenging and emotionally taxing. Yet the outcome demonstrated that truth and courage could prevail. The man had been held responsible, and her voice had mattered. This realization reinforced her belief in the importance of advocacy, persistence, and standing up for oneself and others. She also found that her perspective on life had evolved. The incident had heightened her awareness of personal safety and boundaries, but it had also deepened her empathy for others. She became more attuned to the struggles people faced, particularly those who felt unheard or powerless. Her compassion and understanding grew, and she sought ways to make a positive impact in her community. Volunteering, mentoring, and supporting advocacy initiatives became meaningful extensions of her journey. The young woman continued therapy and self-reflection, acknowledging that healing was ongoing. She celebrated milestones, both small and large, recognizing progress in her emotional well-being, confidence, and sense of safety. She allowed herself moments of joy and normalcy without guilt. Understanding that resilience included embracing life fully despite past trauma, each day became an opportunity to strengthen her inner resources and reclaim her narrative. Friends and strangers alike were inspired by her story. She received messages of gratitude and encouragement from people who had found hope in her journey. These connections reminded her that sharing experiences could empower others and foster a sense of community. She took these opportunities seriously, offering guidance and support while continuing to prioritize her own well-being, as the 3-year journey reached a natural close with the resolution of the case. The young woman reflected on the transformation she had undergone. The incident that had once left her feeling powerless had become a catalyst for growth, resilience, and empowerment. She recognized that fear could be confronted, that persistence could lead to justice, and that personal strength could emerge even from the most challenging circumstances. The legal victory was significant, but the personal victories were equally meaningful. She had regained confidence, asserted her voice, and cultivated emotional resilience. She had built a support system of friends, family, and professionals who reinforced her sense of security and self-worth. She had learned to navigate fear, to seek help, and to embrace personal growth, creating a foundation for a fulfilling and empowered life. Looking forward, the young woman envisioned a future shaped by courage, empathy, and purpose. She knew that challenges might arise, but she also knew that she possessed the strength to face them. The cry for mercy she had voiced years ago had not been in vain. It had sparked a journey of accountability, resilience, and empowerment. She carried these lessons forward, committed to living fully, helping others, and honoring the courage that had carried her through in quiet moments of reflection. She acknowledged the profound impact of her experience. The fear and uncertainty had been real, but so had her strength, determination, and the support she had received. She had faced the darkest moments with courage and emerged with a renewed sense of purpose. The story of her cry for mercy, once a moment of vulnerability, had transformed into a testament to human resilience, the power of persistence, and the enduring value of truth and justice. She understood that the journey of healing and empowerment was ongoing. But she faced it with confidence and hope. Every step forward was a reminder of the strength she had discovered within herself, the importance of seeking justice, and the value of community and support. The experience had shaped her life profoundly, leaving her wiser, braver, and more determined to embrace life fully and purposefully. 3 years after the cry for mercy, the young woman had not only found justice, but also reclaimed her life. The restaurant incident, while a moment of fear and vulnerability, had become a catalyst for growth, reflection, and empowerment. She had learned the value of courage, the importance of speaking out, and the enduring impact of persistence and resilience. Her story stood as a powerful reminder that even in the face of fear, truth and courage could prevail, and that justice, though sometimes delayed, could ultimately speak.